We are going to solve quadratic equations, this time using a formula. We have solved quadratic equations before, but we've solved them the simple way. Today I'll show you a way to do it when the simple way doesn't work, and that it would be using a formula. Just to remind ourselves what we're talking about. What is a quadratic equation? Well, it's an equation because the word is in there, so it means we're going to have an equal sign. It's quadratic, which means there's going to be an x squared in there. The general shape form of a quadratic equation is this. Equals 0, right? Sometimes we forget that we need it to be an equation, that we try to do things when it's not even a quadratic equation. So this is the shape that it's always in. A, B, and C are constant, so numbers. The x's are the variables. Okay. An example of a quadratic equation would be, well, there's so many possibilities. Could be x squared plus 5x plus 6 is 0. We have a C of 6, our B is 5, and our A is, what is it? You can't say it's nothing. There is no A. There is indeed an A, and it's 1, right? We could imagine a 1 times x squared. But because we don't necessarily need to write it, it's not always in there, but the A value in this case is 1. What if we run into an equation that's like this? This would be a quadratic equation, but it's not in the correct shape yet. So we can change it to this form. We subtract 5x from both sides. We add 6 to both sides. And on the right, we'll have left 0. See how now it's in the correct shape. Okay, so a quadratic equation may look right away like a quadratic equation. Sometimes you won't recognize it immediately as being a quadratic equation, but when you move things around, get it into the right shape, then it will look like a quadratic equation. Okay, let's pick this one just to remember how we learned to solve quadratic equations the simple way. This was x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Remember, we would, this is easy because it's just x times x. There's no, the A value is 1, so that's easy. Remember, we would look for two integers that multiply to give 6 and add up to give 5. So if you don't immediately see it, you could list the factors of 6. 6 is 1 times 6, 2 times 3, or negative 1 times negative 6. We know it's not going to be negative because this is positive. Or negative 2 times negative 3, or switched. Which of these four pairs add up to give 5, a positive 5? Which two add up to 5? Well, these do. 2 and 3, plus 2 and plus 3. Now, this factor or this factor is going to have to be equal to 0, otherwise we would never get 0 as the product. So either x plus 2 is 0 or x plus 3 is 0. You don't actually need the parentheses, but just to make it look like that, I like doing this. So if we solve for x here, x would equal negative 2. If we solve for x here, x would equal negative 3. So either x is a negative 2 or x equals -3. If x is -2, this equation will be true. If x is -3, this equation will be true. Okay, so because there's two different ways to get to 0. Right, that's the simple way. What will we do when the simple way doesn't work? First, let's ask ourselves, why wouldn't it work? Can we imagine any instances where it wouldn't work? What if you listed all the factors of 6 like this, and there wouldn't be a pair that adds up to 5? That could, in fact, happen. And that happens when your solutions, when your x values, why doesn't it work? The x values are not integers. See how here we were only looking for the integers that multiply to give 6. But really, you can get 6 by multiplying 4 and 1.5, right? Or 8 and 0.75, right? We didn't include all these possibilities because they would be endless, right? So the simple way only works when the solutions for x are integers. When they're not, we need a different way. And I'm going to give you a formula, which I never really enjoy because it seems like magic, and it is a bit of magic, but if we had time to go check it, then it would make a lot of sense, but I'm not going to prove any of this to you. I'm just going to give you the formula. You can find the solutions for x by using this formula. It's square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, a couple of things you need to know. The b's, the a's, the c's come from this equation, right? So if you get your equation into the right shape, you'll see your a, b, and c values, right? You plug them in here. What does this mean? Plus, minus. That means there's you either add or subtract this bit. You know how x usually has two, or often has two solutions. One solution will be when you add the square root of this. The other solution will be when you subtract the square root of this. So this just means pick either one. They both give one of the answers. They each give one of the answers for x. So this means plus or minus. All right. Let's do an example. Example problem: 2x squared minus 9x plus 8 is 0. Well, you see that it's in the correct shape already. Let's first list what our a value is, what our b value is, just to be organized. Our a value here is 2. The b value here is -9. Don't forget the sign. It's very important. C is 8 here. So to find our answers for x, x equals -b. B is -9. So we plug that in. Let's leave plus or minus. Make that distinction later. Square root of b squared minus 9 squared is just 81, right? Minus 4 times ac. A times c is 16. 4 times 16 is 64. Sorry if I'm doing too many steps at once. Just pause the video and check whether I'm right if you want to. Divided by 2 times a. 2 times a is 2 times 4. 2 times 2 is 4. All right? So x equals negative 9, that's just 9, plus or minus the square root of 81 minus 64 is 17, and we divide that by 4. So now we go into like making a distinction between the two possible answers. We need the square root of 17. Oh my goodness. I don't have my calculator. It's not written in here. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, so one of the answers is going to be x equals 9 minus the square root of 17 divided by 4, right? And the other answer is going to be x equals 9 plus the square root of 17 divided by 4. When you plug all of this into your calculator, you will see that here x will equal 1.22, and that's rounded to 2 decimal points. If you plug this into your calculator, you will get x equals 3.28. And this would be your final answer for this question. So you just plug in a, b, and c into this equation. You've solved the equation all the way to the end. When it's as simplified as it can get, like you have just one simple number under the square root symbol, then you distinguish between your one answer using the minus square root and the other answer using the plus square root. Have I told you everything? I think I have. I think you're ready to do some practice with the formula.